I'll never forget the look on my father's face the day he humiliated me in front of the whole family. We were standing by the infinity pool at the reunion, and he didn't even bother lowering his voice. Some people are born to lead, others are born to follow. You've made your choice, Melissa, he sneered. The crowd fell silent. What they didn't know would completely upend everything he thought he understood about me. My name is Melissa. I'm 29. I work in hospitality management, or at least that's the story I fed my family for the past 10 years. Growing up, I was the disappointment in their eyes. My cousins became doctors, lawyers, and entrepreneurs. My brother launched a successful tech startup. Me, I walked out of my childhood home at 19 with $200 and a suitcase of clothes I barely fit into anymore, determined to prove that I didn't need their validation to thrive. For the last decade, I built a career from scratch. I started as a front desk clerk at a modest hotel, pulling double shifts and taking business management courses at night. I learned every part of the operation: housekeeping, dining services, event coordination, guest relations. I absorbed it all, soaking up knowledge like it was oxygen. My family never once asked about my life. They assumed I was struggling, barely scraping by, chained to dead-end jobs. My father would introduce me at gatherings with a dismissive gesture. This is Melissa. She works at hotels. The way he said it made it sound as though I spent my days scrubbing toilets rather than running six-figure properties. Eventually, I stopped attending family events. Their constant judgment was exhausting. Then, 5 years later, my Aunt Crystal called me, sobbing. Please, Melissa, you have to come to the family reunion. It's at a beautiful new resort on the coast. We miss you so much. I agreed. But they had no idea I wasn't just coming as a guest. I owned the entire resort they'd chosen for their celebration. I arrived at Clearwater Bay Resort on a Saturday afternoon in late June. To maintain my cover, I parked in the guest lot rather than the executive spaces reserved for owners. The lobby was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years: cousins, aunts, uncles, distant relatives I barely recognized. Everyone was dressed as though they were attending a gala, not a family weekend. Designer bags, luxury watches, outfits worth more than a month's rent. My cousin Jennifer spotted me first. Melissa, wow, you look different, she exclaimed. The people around her laughed, as if she had just delivered a punchline. I smiled faintly and walked past them. Then my father appeared, cocktail in hand, the same look of disappointment plastered across his face. I'm surprised you actually showed up, he said. I didn't think you could afford the time off. I met his gaze and smiled. I made it work, I replied. That evening, during the welcome dinner on the terrace overlooking the ocean, my Uncle Richard gave a toast celebrating family achievements. The sky was painted with the warm hues of sunset, white tablecloths fluttering in the breeze. He applauded Jennifer for finishing nursing school, Tyler for his law practice, and Kevin for his startup's recent success. Then his gaze landed on me. And Melissa, he said, voice dripping with pity. Well, she's here. Polite laughter rippled through the table. My father leaned over, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. At least she's consistent, always settling for less. My cheeks burned, but I stayed composed. I had mastered hiding emotions in corporate boardrooms where men twice my age tried to intimidate me. After dinner, I stepped outside toward the pool for some air. My father followed. You know your problem, he started. You gave up on being somebody. Your mother and I raised you better than this. I stopped and turned to face him. Better than what? I asked quietly. Better than working service jobs your whole life. You had potential, real potential, and you threw it away because you couldn't handle the pressure, he said. My Aunt Crystal, clearly drunk, joined in. Sweetie, it's not too late. You could go back to school. Start fresh. You're still young. I took a slow breath. I'm happy where I am, I said firmly. My father shook his head. Happy? That's what failures call settling. I walked away before I could say anything more. Unbeknownst to them, I had been observing their arrival for hours through the resort security cameras. The next morning, my aunt announced a special family brunch at the resort's exclusive rooftop restaurant. The sun shone brightly, seagulls gliding above. Invitations were handed out at breakfast. Jennifer received one. Tyler one. Kevin won. Everyone at the main family table got a cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. Everyone except me. I asked my cousin Brittany about it, and she barely glanced up from her phone. It was meant for relatives who had actually achieved something. No offense, she added casually, as if commenting on the weather. I watched from the hotel lobby as they filed into the private elevator, laughing, clinking champagne glasses, their faces lit with enjoyment. My father didn't even glance back at me. There I stood, wearing a sundress, utterly invisible to the very people who were supposed to love me without question. Later that afternoon, the family gathered by the infinity pool for professional photos. A photographer had been hired to capture the occasion. When my mother finally noticed me lingering near the cabanas, she beckoned me over with a reluctant wave. Then, leaning close, she murmured just for me, "Stand in the back, sweetie. We want the successful ones front and center." My cousin Nicholas overheard and chuckled. "Come on, Aunt Rachel. Let her appear in just one shot. She probably can't afford a vacation like this again." The photographer shifted awkwardly, unsure what to do, but he said nothing. He was being paid to stay quiet. So I stood at the back row, smiling through humiliation while everyone else posed proudly in front. Afterwards, my father pulled me aside near the towel station. "You're embarrassing us, Melissa. Next time, just stay home." On the third day, my Uncle Richard approached me in the lobby while I pretended to read a magazine. "Hey, Melissa, since you work in hospitality, could you speak to the manager? Our shower's acting up." I blinked, trying to process. "You want me to complain for you?" He nodded, as if it were the most natural request. Then my cousin Samantha appeared, uninvited. "And maybe you could get us a spa discount, too. Use your connections, or whatever." They truly believed I was nothing more than a low-level employee, someone to serve their whims. I told them I'd see what I could do. That evening, while passing the outdoor bar on my way to the beach, I overheard my father speaking to my uncle. I ducked behind a decorative palm tree, hidden from view. "I don't know where we went wrong with her," my father said. "Her brother's thriving, building something real. But Melissa, she's stuck, as always." Uncle Richard nodded. "Some kids just lack ambition. At least she seems content helping others." My father snorted into his whiskey. "Content? She's delusional if she thinks that counts as success." Something inside me finally snapped. For a decade, I had poured everything into my own dream. Relationships, sleep, sanity, all sacrificed to create something meaningful, something entirely mine. And they still saw me as insignificant. But I was far from insignificant. I was the person who decided whether they got to stay at my resort. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just a hotel employee scraping by. 5 years ago, I had partnered with a commercial real estate investor I met at a hospitality conference in San Diego. Together, we purchased a beachfront property on the brink of foreclosure. Every cent I had saved went into that venture. Every connection I'd made, every lesson I'd learned climbing the hospitality ladder, I applied to revive it. We rebuilt the property from the ground up. New plumbing, electrical systems, interiors redesigned by an award-winning architect I had befriended during my years in luxury hotels. 2 years ago, Clearwater Bay Resort reopened, immediately becoming one of the top-rated luxury destinations on the coast. 5-star reviews flooded in, travel magazines featured it, and weekend bookings were on a waiting list. I was the majority owner and managing director. My name was on every deed, every contract, every executive decision shaping the resort's operations and reputation. Yet I had kept my ownership private, operating through an LLC to avoid attention from people who only wanted something from me. My family had no idea that the very reunion they were enjoying had been held at my property. 6 months ago, when my aunt reached out about hosting the family gathering, I had quietly approved it under my company's name, not my own. I watched their reservation come through the system, noted their special requests, their complaints about room assignments, and their demands for upgrades they hadn't paid for. I instructed my team to treat them as VIPs, even though they acted as if I were invisible. Every email, every booking confirmation, every interaction they had with my staff, I had it all documented. Tomorrow evening, at the final reunion dinner, The resort's mysterious owner would appear in person to greet the guests. Only my assistant director, Lauren, knew the truth. "Are you sure about this?" she had asked me yesterday in my office. "It's going to be brutal when they find out." I smiled. "They've been brutal to me my whole life." She gave me a slow nod. "Fair enough. I'll make sure the microphone is ready." Lauren became my closest ally in the lead up to the big reveal. At 34, she had left a high-powered corporate law career for hospitality, valuing quality of life over endless billable hours. She understood what it meant to be underestimated by people who should know better. "Your family's been a nightmare for the staff," she told me during our morning briefing. "Constant complaints, snapping fingers at servers like they're servants, demanding upgrades they didn't pay for, and acting offended when policies were explained." I let out a long sigh. "Sounds about right. That's always been them." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "Your father tried to get a junior housekeeper fired yesterday because she knocked on his door during his nap. He screamed at her in the hallway." I shivered at the mental image. "I'll make sure she knows her job isn't in danger. She deserves that." Lauren placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You don't need to apologize for them, Melissa. Just make sure they remember this night for the rest of their lives." By the final day, my family's arrogance had escalated further. My cousin Jennifer bragged in the spa about her influence at the hospital where she worked, painting herself as indispensable. My father monopolized the pool bar, recounting the successes of his children as if I didn't exist. My uncle Richard attempted to negotiate a friends and family discount with the front desk manager, despite having no connection to ownership. And at one point, my cousin Tyler introduced me to a server with a casual. "You two should meet. She's in your line of work." The server, who had attended several staff meetings I led, smiled politely and remained silent. That evening, I stood in my private office on the top floor, looking down at the resort. My family gathered on the terrace for pre-dinner cocktails, laughing, sipping wine, snapping photos in designer outfits. They had spent the week treating employees as if they were beneath them, oblivious to the fact that those same staff members worked harder in a single day than most of my relatives could manage in a month. In 1 hour, they would finally discover who had been footing the bill, who had been watching every move, who owned every square inch they walked on. Lauren knocked lightly on my office door. "It's time. Are you ready?" I straightened my blazer and took one last look in the mirror. I had been ready for a decade. The farewell dinner was set in the resort's grand ballroom, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the ocean, chandeliers glittering above, tables dressed in pristine white linens. My family occupied the central table, already halfway through their second bottle of wine before the first course arrived. I slipped in quietly through the staff entrance, taking a seat where I could observe unnoticed, savoring the moment before the storm. When my father saw me, he rolled his eyes and muttered something to my mother that made her frown. After the main course was cleared, Lauren stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Hayes, Assistant Director of Clearwater Bay Resort. It's been an honor hosting your family reunion this week," she said, her voice polite, the applause polite but distracted. "Before dessert, we have a special guest who would like to say a few words." My father straightened, likely expecting a local politician or a celebrity investor. But then Lauren gestured toward me at the back of the room. The ballroom fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward me. Slowly, I walked toward the stage, the sharp click of my heels against the marble echoing in the still air. My family's faces were frozen, confusion written all over them. I took the microphone from Lauren. "Hi, I'm Melissa," I said, "and I own this resort." My father's wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor, the red wine blooming across the white tablecloth. "I built this place from the ground up over the last 5 years," I continued, my voice steady. "It's been my life's work, my passion, my dream realized. Hosting families here has always been special, but this week was uniquely meaningful. I got to host my own family in the property I created with my own hands and vision." My cousin Jennifer looked like she might faint. My uncle Richard's face had gone pale. I could feel their disbelief like a tangible weight in the room. "I've heard every complaint, every demand, every rude comment you directed at my staff," I said, looking my father directly in the eye. I saw how you treated people you thought were beneath you. And yet, somehow, you believed it was me who was unworthy. My father tried to speak. Melissa, this is inappropriate. I'm not finished, Dad. The room was silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. You called me a disgrace, a failure, someone who settled for mediocrity, I said, my voice calm but firm. You spent my adult life making me feel worthless, but I'm not the one who should be ashamed right now, you are. I paused to let it sink in. Then I dropped the final bomb. The bill for your week-long stay, VIP suite upgrades, premium meal packages, spa treatments, private events, comes to $47,000. I've covered every penny. Consider it my gift to the family that never believed in me. I set the microphone down. Enjoy your dessert. Checkout is at 11 a.m. tomorrow. I walked off the stage and out of the ballroom, leaving them in stunned silence. I skipped breakfast the next morning, watching from my office as they packed their cars. Lauren told me later that my father tried multiple times to find me, but I had instructed security to deny him access. My mother texted around noon. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. I didn't respond. I deleted it. I turned off my phone. A week later, my aunt called, sobbing, begging for forgiveness and asking me to come to Thanksgiving dinner. I told her I'd think about it, then hung up before she could say more. I haven't decided if I'll ever speak to most of them again. But I know one thing. I don't need their approval anymore. I built something real, meaningful mine. I proved my own worth to myself. For the first time, their silence doesn't hurt, it frees me. I am done performing for people who never saw me. I finally see myself clearly, and that's enough. Standing up for yourself is hard, but possible. If this story resonates, join our community, share your thoughts, and let me know where you're watching from. These stories show what it means to claim your worth.